My goodness. It's a chilly Arkansas morning. I have missed this little herb room tremendously. It's dirty. We've got some like Gallagher fencing in here that we've got for animals coming in the spring. I moved a bunch of furniture around, took stuff from in here, moved into the office, took stuff from, you know, what was June's room, moved out here, and I've neglected the space quite easily. And now I'm realizing, oh man, this place is messy. It kind of needs a good clean. So I may work on that some today. I was working with my friend Jess this week, and you know, I have told you guys over and over again, I am not starting my seeds too early this year. Just not gonna do it. Well, I have never really grown peppers super successfully. I can get them to start, but they just stay like this big. And it's one of those things, like I buy my pepper starts from a local farmer every single year. But last year we were introduced to the shishito pepper, which a lot of people probably know, and we had them just where you cut them, you know, you cut slices in them, throw them in a cast iron with some butter, you blister them, and they were just like amazing. And I told Nathan, I was like, I don't know what I have to do, but I am growing the flippin' shishito pepper this year. So I have a bunch of these. I've got like a whole, you know, box that I bought like this year. Just, I don't know if I thought maybe buying from a different seed company would help my lack of knowing how to grow a pepper. But was hanging out with my friend this week, and she was just like, you need to be starting peppers like now. And I was like, what, now? She was like, yeah. So, well, I wasn't going to start them until I started my tomatoes. And she was like, no, they take longer, so you need to start them now. You know, keep them in your greenhouse, your house, your herb room, wherever you plan on starting them, and don't move them out until like April, maybe even May. And so then I felt this sense of urgency, like, oh no, now I'm behind. So that's what I'm gonna do today. I'm gonna start more seeds. I'm actually not going to put these seeds out in the greenhouse, the new one, mainly because we do not have all of the like stuff rigged for electrical out there. Now, peppers, same with like when you're starting tomatoes and stuff like that, I don't put heat mats on all of my things. However, my heat loving things I do, because it tends to help them grow faster and, you know, stuff like that. So usually my tomatoes and my peppers, especially my peppers, I just stick a heat mat on. So for the sake of not wanting to run all of that and, you know, add another honeydew for Nathan, I thought I'd just start them in here in the grow room, kick on the grow light. I can even put a heater in here and just kind of control that a lot better. If it's hot one day, you know, our herb room's just right off the house, so it becomes a lot easier to kind of baby. And I would maybe recommend that to you too. Like if you do have a greenhouse, your peppers may benefit from being started inside. I know several people that do that. Even Jess said she was intending on actually just starting her peppers inside under a grow light, and then would move them out when it got a bit hotter outside. And that's mainly just because peppers and tomatoes love heat, and right now in Arkansas it's like 30 and cold. So I'm gonna do that today. I'm actually really excited. I've been moving all of my stuff, you know, so I've been moving it from the old greenhouse to the new greenhouse. I've kind of got leftovers in here. So we're gonna kind of forage around this morning and try to find all of the materials I need. And then we're gonna get started. And this was a perfect way to start my day. Like I was not intending to start seeds today. Now that I am, I'm like, oh yeah, it's gonna be a good day. I really wanna show you guys something pretty cool. This is my favorite thing about our farm. We are backed up to, like we're surrounded by cow pastures. We've got a neighbor on the right side of us, but all the other sides, it's just cow pasture. And it's absolutely breathtaking. In the morning, I get up extremely early just to come watch the sun rise out here, and it's definitely worth it. I'll show you guys why. Look how beautiful that is. Usually we'll see turkeys and deer, and there are cows on this pasture as well. And it's just absolutely like so dreamy. I'm gonna miss this place when we leave. You know, I always try to be diligent anytime we you know, move, I try to think about, well, what was that one thing about the place we just came from that, like, I really missed, and I want to like have that happy memory associated with that place. And here there's lots of lovely things about this place. We're actually gonna do a video pretty soon just talking about like the journey on how we got here and what this farm represents to us, which is a lot. We actually like moved here with the hope of starting a farm debt-free, and so I'll have that video out soon. But this farm to me represents a lot, you know. It represents a lot of sacrifices, it represents a lot of hard work, and this was the first place that we lived that I really started seeing my dreams come true as a farmer and as an entrepreneur. And you know, my daughter was born in this house. Like, there's, when you start thinking about all the memories and knowing that like, oh really, this isn't our forever home, like one day we're gonna live somewhere else, it kind of makes me sad. But I know that of course there's going to be lots of lovely memories I carry from here. I think the biggest memory is going to be the fact that June was born here, you know, like that's so sweet. And maybe one day we can come back and visit and I can tell her like, oh, you were born in that room. She might actually think that's kind of weird. But then the view, like, you know, it's such a serene place to live, and we've never actually lived. When Nathan and I first got married, we lived in an apartment in the city, and that was really foreign to me. I never grew up in the city, and he had been living in the city for quite a few years. And so when we bought our first house, it was a log cabin on an acre. You know, we had some neighbors, but it wasn't really a neighborhood. And so living out here, you just really appreciate like that nature are my neighbors. Like, we do have a neighbor, they're really nice. They're like, you need neighbors when you live out in the sticks too, you know, because when we're gone, they help us take care of the animals and they just watch over things, and they're just precious people to have. And I've really enjoyed having that community too and not feeling so secluded. When I come out here on mornings like this where everything's just like frosted, the sun's coming up, it's just beautiful. I'm like, this is why I live in the country. I like this so much. It just gives you like such an all appreciation of like, God, you are cool. Like, you are so stinking cool. So I just hope that you find whatever that is for you today and kind of hold on to the beauty, even if it's not where you want to be. And that's something I do encourage you to, you know, maybe you're in that transition season and maybe you know that where you are is not where you want to be this year or next year or in 5 years. Focus on that one thing, you know, because when you have in your mind, you know, say you're gonna quit a job and you're fine with this job, right? And then as soon as you give your 2 weeks notice, like, your brain shuts off and you start finding everything you hate about that job and why you're so ready to quit it. I think the same thing can happen when you get fixated on moving and you've like, oh, I want bigger space, I want more land, I want to be able to do this, this, and this, or whatever it may be, whatever your needs may be. But then I feel like if you stay in that mindset, you start really disliking where you are, and you start maybe getting in a season where you complain about those things a lot. And so I have found for me, when I know we are in a transition period, I try to focus on the things that I really admire about this house and the things that I'm really gonna miss. The view is definitely one. The memories in this house is huge. The sacrifices and the hard work. You know, my marriage that was completely restored in this house, like hardships that we walked through. I see a lot of restoration that took place in this house, and that's really, really special. Okay, before I get all emotional on you guys, these are actually what I'm going to plant my peppers in. These are my bootstrap farmer trays. I really love them. These are the 2.5 inch pots. And I'm starting them in these. You guys know I talked about not starting anything that I'm like selling in these, or if I did, I'd up pot these again before I sold them. But the peppers are just for me. I didn't want to commit to peppers in the plant sale and then me not be able to actually, you know, grow anything decent. So I'm just going to start these. I'm probably going to start quite a few though. I usually try to grow enough to be able to give the neighbor some as well, you know, if I ever have too many. And I feel like that's really the benefit of that too. You know, if you plant or you overplant, maybe because you're not sure about germination, and you end up having too many, I actually don't go through and pinch them off. I will completely take the plant apart and separate them and put them in separate pots. And I usually just give them away, you know, like it brings me a lot of joy. I would probably find a container or a pot from them. I actually think I might try to grow some peppers in the bottom part of my Greenstalk just to see, you know, what that does. I kind of have some liberties with that this year. And so that's just what we're gonna do. But I'm gonna be using these I am also gonna take my seed starting mix inside. Now, someone asked me this the other day. I feel like I should have mentioned this to you guys probably prior to now. And their question was, you know, my seed starting mix is so dry that I'm having a hard time with it absorbing, you know, water well. Is this normal? Is it my soil? So what I do is, you know, I take all my soil and I put it in a huge tote, and that tote is actually going to be in the herb room. So I'll show you guys what I'm talking about when we go back in there. Then I take a water hose. In this case, I'm not going to have a water hose in the house, so I'll just fill up, you know, my pitcher, and I actually will soak, you know, the soil before I actually plant in it. Now, I don't want it to be saturated. I want to mix it all together and it have the consistency of like a wet sponge. You know, I'm sure you've heard of that often. That's kind of the goal I'm looking for. But I do pre-soak my soil before I plant, and I do find that that helps with kind of those initial absorption issues. So just play around with that. Just know there's really no right or wrong answer to that. But if you have started some of your seeds and then you notice, oh man, my soil's really not absorbing well, it's still kind of, sorry, it's cold, guys, it's still kind of, you know, dry, then I would just add some water to it. I have been wanting to check on my other seedlings out here. Now, they're not doing anything, and I think that's because it's too cold out here. I've actually got frost on the inside of, you see that? So I'm probably, until Nathan, hopefully this weekend he can get the heater hooked up in here. It is jumping like way low. It was so weird. I was in here the other day. It was like 50 degrees outside, mid 80s in here. And then the last few days we've had like 20, 30 degree days. Exceptionally cold, and so these just aren't thriving. So I'm probably going to bring these inside with me as well, pop them under a grow light, turn that heater on at night, and so I'll just probably do that until they sprout, and then I'll bring them back out here. I'm trying not to get discouraged, you know, because I came out here day after day and I'm like, oh, I really want to see these sprout, and knowing that you kind of need to give them that optimal environment to thrive in. And it was my fault. It's a bit more complicated hanging grow lights in here, as you guys can imagine. Nathan was like, that's really not just that easy of a task, so that was probably a bit ambitious on my part. But let's grab our materials and let's head back in where it's kind of warmer. Alright, so what I'm going to do before I go out into the other greenhouse and get some more of these is figure out actually how many I plan on starting, because it is 27 degrees here in Arkansas and my fingers are numb. So before I go out there and just kind of aimlessly like try to figure out, I thought I'd just do the math beforehand. I actually bought these a few years ago. Let's see if y'all can see that. These are like supposed to be what it says, a super tiny pepper from Peru, often grown as a house plant. Where the small peppers are harvested as needed in the kitchen, the pepper has a distinct fruity citrus aroma and is equal in heat to a cayenne pepper. Now, this seems silly to me to grow as far as eating, because look how small that is. Like, for me to spend so much time and peppers be so hard, but I think I may try to grow these and, you know, have it as like a house plant. So I'm probably going to devote like one pot to that. I got these large red sweet peppers. Let's see. There we go. Got these from Seeds Now. Probably grow 3 of those. The shishito. I got the sweet habanero from Parisian Seeds. There we go. And so those are really the only sweet peppers. I'll probably end up growing like 10 of those and then 2 of everything else. And I was going to try my hand at maybe just like 1 or 2 bell peppers. We don't really eat a ton of bell peppers. I'll saute them up with some veggies, or sometimes I buy them and we make like stuffed bell peppers. And these aren't very big either, but I did buy one this year that I thought was really cool, and it's the white cloud. Can you guys see how really cool that looks? So I thought that this would add a really cool pop of color in the garden. Like, I just think it's really pretty. So I'm going to attempt to grow that. And then I have got this lilac bill from Baker Creek. And so those are the only 2. I have grown the violet sparkle before, kind of this oblong pepper. I actually really liked it. It did take me forever to get it big enough to move into the garden. And when I did, I think I still moved it too soon. It kind of stunted and it did not put on a lot of fruit. And I think that that was probably, obviously, an error on my part. right, I got the rest of my trays. Now let's get started. So I'm just gonna go through and label all my stuff before I get started. I got these, I wanna say maybe just off of Botanical Interest. Usually I order them off of Amazon bulk and they're kind of cheap. To avoid trying to label each one, that seems silly and waste, I will be putting all these and bottom watering them. So I will be putting these in here and bottom watering them. For the one that I'm doing 10, I should be able to get 10 across. And typically what I do is I just write on the marker, say it's the, Violet Bell, I'll put Violet Bell times 10. And that way I know that 10 in that row is what that was. And I find that that's easier for me to do that, especially when I'm putting them in here and I'm breaking them up like, 5 of this variety, 5 of that variety. In this case, I'm just growing like 2 in a lot of different varieties. So that's just kind of what I do. It seems to be a bit easier and a lot less wasteful, in my opinion, on having to write one in each individual container. Now that I have labeled those, I'm going to fill my tote up with all the soil. This is the tote that I have. It's actually really heavy duty. I got it from Home Depot. It was what I used when I kept my microgreens growing. And it just latches really, really well. It's really sturdy. I could even keep it outside if I needed to. So now I'm just going to pour all my soil into there, dampen it, and mix it really well. Now, I usually go through and just kind of work through any larger clumps before I wet it down at all. And I would definitely recommend you guys do that, especially if you're using some sort of like potting mix instead of a seed starting mix. A lot of times the potting mixes have, larger particles in them, so they'll have like large bark or something like that. And you may just go through at this point and remove those things that you don't like. On a seed starting mix in particular, they are much finer. That's why they're kind of a bit more expensive. And you can't really find them in bulk because it's a bit harder, to get all this material down and find really well. But once I've done that, I've just kind of worked my hands through the soil, made sure no big clumps are in here. I'll just go through, add some water, mix it up really good, and then we can get started. So ideally you would take your water hose with like the shower heading, the one that just kind of spritz out like your shower head. You would take that, go around this a few times, turn it over, do that again. For the sake of me being in my herb room, I am just going to use my pitcher. Now this is really not ideal, however, I'm just working with what I have. And so I'm just going to gently go through, add it, mix it in. Right. You guys can see we are starting to get there. Once I've reached just the consistency, and this will kind of be like once you start, dealing with this more and you start becoming more comfortable, you'll figure out, oh yeah, my plants thrive when, the soil's this wet or whatever. So this isn't like a die hard, oh, you have to do it this way. There's flexibility with that. I'm just going to go through and fill up my pots. All right, any day I can get my hands dirty is a good day. It's like another day, another seed starting adventure. All right, now that I've got it all in here, I'm gonna move it up to the other shelf and we'll start planting. You know, it's kind of funny. I remember for years being like really intimidated to start seeds. I think I was just, it seemed like foreign language to me. Like it just seemed like, oh, only the pros start seeds, you know. And then I realized, oh, you really don't have to be a pro to start seeds. It's actually really simple, and then there's so many benefits that come from it, like all the different varieties. You know, growing things that you can't get in the store is actually really cool. Experimenting is really cool. And so I encourage you, if maybe you're watching this and you've been in the place of like, oh, I really want seed start, I think that's really, really cool. It's just really intimidating. I encourage you to start with stuff that, like, you know, your family will eat. You know, like maybe if your family eats a lot of tomatoes, then grow a lot of tomatoes. Just know that there's a lot of flexibility. You know, there are those particular plants that are harder, you know, to start and grow. I've even shared with you guys in my experience, I've had some hard times with different herbs and things like that. Peppers for one of those. But I think the beauty in seed starting is you don't have to give up, right? Like I've started peppers probably 3 years now. Since we moved in this house, I have been actively trying to grow peppers from seeds. I've not been really successful. Now, I could deem it, oh, I just don't know what I'm doing. It must be me. I'm the problem. I'm just not going to do this anymore. But I'm not a quitter. So I'm going to keep starting the pepper seeds, and I'm going to keep tweaking it and figuring out. Before I started mine in the greenhouse, and now I'm starting them in the herb room, where I can kind of have a better control on the heat that they get and kind of cater to their specific needs that I have found for me. And so I encourage you, you know, if you've tried it and maybe you're feeling a bit discouraged, don't be discouraged by it. Keep trying again, because when you do finally get it, it's so rewarding. I remember I started cucamelons. I attempted to grow cucamelons for like 4 years, and I direct sowed them. I transplanted them. I actually got them to where I had a good start, and then by the time I moved them out into the garden, they all completely died and just quit thriving. Nathan really wanted me to grow a cucamelon. I was really determined, oh, I can do this. And so I did. I actively pursued growing the cucamelon every different which way you could grow it. And last year, I had my first really successful cucamelon year. We had so many cucamelons. They did beautifully. Even then, I started some, transplanted them out. They took major transplant shock, even though I'd done all of the hardening off process. They're just kind of finicky for me, I found. And so I just direct sowed some, and I just catered to them, and I just really tried to meet their needs, and was very, very determined that, you know what, you are not going to defeat me, cucamelon. Like, I am going to win this battle. And it was so sweet, because I realized, even though I hadn't grown it successfully in the past, I stayed determined. I stayed driven. And last year I had a really successful cucamelon year. Turns out I don't actually think I'm going to grow them again, oddly enough. Now I'm just like, I'm not really sure I need to grow them anymore. Like, I got everything out of it that I wanted to get out of it. Which is kind of funny. Like, we just didn't eat them as much for the work that was put into it. But I feel like I needed that. I needed to know that, you know what, Jill, you can do this. So same with seed starting. If maybe you've started before and you just weren't really successful, let me be the person that tells you, you can do this. Keep trying. It will get easier. You will learn tricks along the way. And you'll kind of learn just based off of what your plant's telling you. As your seedling starts to grow and develop, you can kind of understand the needs that it needs based off of what the plant looks like, just the signs that it's telling you. So the back of your seed packet, or the front of your seed packet, it will tell you how deep you want to plant these. You know, some of them you just sow directly on the surface, depending on the variety. Like, say, an herb or a lettuce, they usually just tell you to lightly sow it on the surface. With the peppers, I don't really read the packets anymore, if I'm being completely honest. I just kind of put a little indentation with my finger. If you have a widger that has like a little dibbler in it, you can also use that and just make a small indentation. Now, I am putting 1 seed of each of these in here. And the reason I am doing that is because I just bought these seeds this year. They were packed for this year. That will be listed on your seed packet. Like, it'll say packed for, let's see if I can find this. Okay, it says for 2021 lot whatever, and so it tells me on there that it was packed for this year, so I know that these are good seeds. If I was planting a pepper from, you know, maybe like 2019, 2018, I'm worried maybe about germination going down after the few years. That is when I would go through and sow extra. It kind of depends too. Once you figure out what seed companies you know are comfortable buying with and you've had good success with, like my Haas tools, I get about a 99% germination rate on them. Same with Johnny. So like I don't actually sow more than one seed. But your older ones, you do want to be mindful of that if you think your seeds are older, go ahead and just throw a couple in there. And if one germinates, that's better than none germinating. All right, I am on my last set of peppers. Now these I bought a while ago. So these were, it said to sell by 2020, so I think I bought them right at the beginning of 2020. So I am going to sow these, especially because I'm going to sow these heavily, and that is because I tried to grow these last year and I had no germination. That was obviously probably due to some sort of, you know, not giving them the environment that they needed to thrive in. However, now that I do know that, I've taken that evaluation, I'm just going to sow heavily. Just so maybe I can at least get one of these bad boys to sprout. Alright, now that I have all those sowed, I'm going to hook up my heat mat. I get these on Amazon, and honestly they're pretty cheap. They just come in this box. I'll try to find them and tag them for you. You can buy 2 for like $25. This was the 2-piece. Give you guys a shot there. I'm just going to hook this up, keep it underneath there. Now these don't get just really hot, honestly. They don't, but they do keep the soil warm, which is ideal, especially like I mentioned for the peppers. So I'm going to go ahead and get this set up, and then I'm going to fill up my pitcher and just bottom water. I think I've mentioned this to you guys as well. I typically bottom water all of my seedlings. It is, in my opinion, a better option. Mainly because once your seedlings start to sprout, you want to avoid anything overhead, just because your seedlings are really small. They're not really strong or anything like that. You don't want to just cause any damage. So for me, buying these trays like this kind of has been a lifesaver, and they're so versatile. I use these trays year round. You know, even when I grow microgreens, I bottom water my microgreens and everything like that. So for me, it's just kind of what made sense. All right, well, these bad boys are ready to go. Any day I can start seeds is a really good day. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I'll talk to you soon.